Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Daybreak, Jang Song-thaek, uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and widely considered to be the second most powerful man in the North, has been ousted and his confidants executed, according to South Korea's intelligence agency. Korea's ruling and main opposition parties agreed to launch a special parliamentary committee to reform the much maligned National Intelligence Service, which stands accused of meddling in last year's presidential election. Lawmakers also agreed to pass next year's budget bill before the end of the month. Plus, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden reassures Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe about the strength of the U.S. Japan alliance amid high tensions in Northeast Asia. Biden flies to Beijing Wednesday for talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on China's recently established air defense zone. Daybreak begins now.
Thanks for tuning in. You're watching Daybreak on Wednesday, December 4th. I'm Kim Hyun-ji in Seoul. We begin with some major news out of North Korea. South Korea's spy agency says it believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jang Song-thaek, a key figure in North Korea, has been purged. The fall of Jang and the reported execution of two of his closest aides may reflect a major shift in the country's power structure. Han Daeun starts us off.
To the surprise of many, Jang Song-thaek, who has been regarded as the second most influential man in North Korea since state leader Kim Jong-un took power, has reportedly been knocked out of multiple high-ranking positions. Seoul's National Intelligence Service made an emergency report to the National Assembly Tuesday afternoon, saying that Jang had been overthrown and two of his close confidants executed.
Jang Song-thaek's two aides, Lee Yong-ha and Chung Soo-gil, were executed publicly in late November.
The two are said to have been executed on charges of plotting anti-Communist Party schemes against the Kim Jong-un regime. Jang Song-thaek is not only Kim Jong-un's uncle, he has also been the strongest supporter of the North Korean leader and oversaw the entire power succession process. Also, as a vice chairman, Jang had full control over the National Defense Commission, the state's most powerful party. So why the sudden falling out? Although there are no clear answers, the general consensus among political analysts is that he was the loser in a power struggle with Vice Marshal Choi Ryong-hae, foretelling a major shift in North Korea's power structure. Choi is currently one of the four members of the decision-making presidium of the Central Committee Workers' Party and vice chairman of the party's Central Military Commission. South Korean officials presume, given the gravity of the matter, that Kim Jong-un is behind all this. According to Seoul's National Intelligence Service, Kim is spreading the word of the executions and feverishly conducting so-called ideology education that calls for blind loyalty to his regime. Amid the sudden change in Pyongyang's political landscape, the South Korean government is now keeping a keen eye on North Korea's internal political activities. Han Daeun, Arirang News.
In a surprise move, South Korea's ruling and main opposition parties reached a compromise late Tuesday evening to get the National Assembly up and running again, ending a months-long deadlock. Starting Wednesday, lawmakers will get back to overdue legislation, including the long-delayed budget bill for next year. Key to the resolution Tuesday was an agreement to set up a special committee for reforming the nation's spy agency, which is accused of launching an online smear campaign to influence the outcome of last year's presidential election in favor of the conservative ruling party. The special committee will be chaired by a member of the Democratic Party and have the power to legislate bills deemed necessary for keeping the National Intelligence Service in check. The rival parties have been at odds over allegations that government bodies, including the spy agency, meddled in the election. China's controversial air defense zone is certain to top the agenda later this Wednesday when U.S. Vice President Joe Biden meets with China's President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo on Tuesday, Biden stressed the importance of dialogue and avoiding conflict in the region. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
U.S. Vice President Joe Biden met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo on Tuesday, where security issues surrounding the Asia-Pacific region topped the agenda. With Japan on edge over China's controversial new air defense zone, Biden set out to reassure Abe that the U.S.-Japan alliance is the cornerstone of U.S. security. He also called for better cooperation between Washington and his allies in Asia, namely Japan and Korea. With regard to the Chinese defense zone, Biden said he will bring up the matter when he meets with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing later this week. Prior to landing in Tokyo, the first stop of his week-long trip to Northeast Asia, Biden said in an interview with the Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun that the U.S. remains deeply concerned about the current tensions in the region. In response to the U.S. Vice President's comments, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson pointed the finger back at Japan.
We have proposed that China and Japan should enhance communication and dialogue to properly solve the issue of flight safety in the overlapping zone. We have demonstrated our sincerity, but when it comes to dialogue, Japan has kept its door closed.
The spokesman added that more than 20 countries have drawn up air defense zones, and that China's recent announcement was made to safeguard national sovereignty and ensure airspace safety. As for Biden, he will fly to Beijing on Wednesday for talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping, before coming to Seoul on Thursday, where he is to sit down with President Park Geun-hye. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Korea is set to announce a new air defense zone sometime this week in response to China redrawing its territorial air late last month. Seoul, however, says it will stay in close contact with its allies and neighbors to avoid damaging trust among parties concerned. Hwang Sang-hee has the details.
The government will finalize plans to redraw Korea's air defense identification zone by the end of this week. An unnamed senior defense ministry official said Tuesday that Korea's top security advisors will meet later this week to confirm the details of the new zone. Once an agreement is reached, he said neighboring countries will be notified of the plans before a formal announcement is made. The move follows Beijing's announcement of its air defense zone last month, which has escalated military tensions in Northeast Asia. The Chinese zone overlaps with one set by Japan and covers disputed islands that are controlled by Japan. It also partly overlaps with Korea's air defense zone and the aerial space above Yeodo, a submerged rocky mass lying in exclusive economic zones in the East China Sea held by the two countries. Korea is now considering expanding its air defense zone further south to cover Yeodo. Seoul's upcoming announcement is expected to further raise tensions with neighboring nations. And with Washington already promising Tokyo full support in countering Beijing's latest declaration, Seoul's decision may test the Korea-U.S. alliance. China's air defense zone will be one of the key issues addressed by American Vice President Joe Biden during his East Asia tour this week. The White House said that Biden will express U.S. concerns to officials in Beijing while also conferring with its allies, Korea and Japan. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Trade officials from Korea and Australia have started working-level talks on joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. The meeting took place Tuesday in Bali, Indonesia, on the sidelines of a ministerial conference of the World Trade Organization, where all 12 nations already committed to the TPP are gathered. Korea, which late last week expressed an interest in joining the negotiations, will also meet with officials from Japan, Canada, and other nations already in the trade talks this Saturday in Singapore. The Korean government has unveiled a series of new measures to boost the nation's sluggish real estate market. Hwang Ji-hye reports on how the measures are designed to help low-income and first-time home buyers.
The Korean government has laid out a set of revised measures to boost the country's ailing housing market. The measures announced during an economy-related ministers' meeting on Tuesday come as a means to improving two sets of housing policies introduced earlier this year. Despite implementation of the policies already introduced, Finance Minister Hyun Woo-seok, who chaired the meeting, said that the real estate market has failed to enter into a state of full recovery.
There are low expectations that housing prices are going to rise, and there's also the imbalance of supply and demand due to soaring rental security deposits.
To counter the lingering uncertainties in the nation's housing market, the revised stimulus measures include unifying the types of government-backed mortgage loans. The government will also allocate 11 trillion won, or roughly $10 billion for government mortgage loans next year, the same as this year's record amount.
As one single bank will run the loan program, more home buyers will be able to secure loans at lower interest rates.
Under the new measures, the overall number of so-called happy houses, which are a form of public rental housing, will be cut by 30% to 140,000. But the number of other forms of state-owned rental homes solely for low-income families will rise from 60,000 as previously planned to 110,000. Revitalizing the nation's faltering housing market has been a major focus for economic policymakers, as 70% of assets held by Korean households are in real estate. And because of that, officials say the ailing housing market could have a negative impact on consumption, which makes up more than half of the nation's gross domestic product. 황지혜, Arirang News.
The strength of the Korean won is having a negative effect on the nation's exporters, particularly smaller businesses. The Korea Federation of Small and Medium Business says 45% of small exporters surveyed expect a drop in their outbound shipments in the second half of this year, with 2 out of 5 citing the stronger Korean currency as a reason. Over 70% of those with annual exports of $500,000 or less said they did not know how to manage the risks and called for more government support. 40% did see some light at the end of the tunnel, saying exports would improve in the new year.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world,
Return to the negotiation. President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
on your way to work or at home,
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a.
tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday.
President Park Geun-hye and her Greek counterpart have agreed to further boost economic cooperation between their two countries. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju has more on Tuesday's talks.
President Park Geun-hye and visiting Greek President Kyrilos Papoulias mainly focused on expanding the two countries' economic cooperation during their summit talks on Tuesday afternoon. President Park called on the Greek government to quickly ratify the Korea-EU Free Trade Agreement, which provisionally took effect in July 2011. But final ratification requires each EU member country to ratify the trade pact respectively. The trade deal is currently awaiting approval from 6 EU nations: Belgium, France, Greece, Italy, Sweden, and Finland. The two leaders also agreed to strengthen the cooperation in the shipbuilding sector.
그리스는 또 한국이 처음으로 조선 사업을 시작을 했을 때 세계 최초로 선박을 발주해 주었고 그 이후로도 긴밀한 협력을 해온 아주 소중한 나라입니다.
Greece is Korea's largest export market for vessels. Over the past 4 years, ship orders from Greece have accounted for a quarter of the total ship orders received by Korea. And in 2012, out of the $1.9 billion in total Korean exports to Greece, more than 80% were outbound shipments of vessels. President Park also asked the Greek president to support Korean companies hoping to take part in transportation infrastructure projects in Greece. With this year marking the 60th anniversary of the Korean War armistice, President Park thanked Greece for sending some 10,000 troops annually during the war, and the two leaders promised to continue cooperating on security issues on the Korean peninsula. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
The head of the World Bank, Kim Jong-un, returned to his birth country this week for a 3-day visit to take part in the grand opening ceremony of a World Bank Group office. At a press conference in Seoul Tuesday, Kim said Korea's rapid modernization over the past 60 years should be used as a global development model. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
President of the World Bank Jin Kim has urged Korea to play an increasingly active role in global development issues, citing Korea's successful transformation from an aid recipient to a donor country. Kim said Korea's experience has a lot to offer to many developing countries that are still struggling with extreme poverty.
When I first took up my current role, I was very encouraged to find that many leaders in Africa and other developing countries wanted to know the story of Korea's economic miracle.
Korea's GNI per capita stood at about $67 in the early 1950s, which at the time was lower than many African countries, but the figure has since jumped to over $20,000. Kim praised Seoul's plans to increase the amount of overseas development assistance to $3 billion by 2015. He called for more collaboration between Korea's private sector and the World Bank to accelerate efforts to end poverty and boost prosperity.
But what I would say is I think that there is an underappreciation of the opportunity in Africa among Korean companies. This is an area of enormous opportunity and also not only for strong economic returns, but also for having an impact in development.
During his 3-day visit to Korea, Kim is scheduled to attend the grand opening of a new World Bank Group office in Incheon and meet Wednesday with Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
NATO foreign ministers have condemned the use of excessive force against protesters in Ukraine and urged all parties to refrain from further clashes. In a joint statement Tuesday, the ministers urged Ukraine to abide by its international commitments and to uphold the freedom of expression, and called on both the government and opposition to engage in dialogue. This comes after police used batons and stun grenades to crack down on demonstrators protesting against the president's recent decision to back out of a European Union trade deal. It's been 2 months since the Obama administration launched what turned out to be a disastrous healthcare website. To move past his website woes, President Obama will try to renew support for his signature Affordable Care Act, which was designed to give health insurance to 40 million uninsured Americans. The White House says Obama and his close aides will highlight the successful aspects of the law in the coming weeks, including provisions that prevent insurance firms discriminating against those with pre-existing conditions. They will also work on fixing the website by January, when insurance coverage is scheduled to take effect. Online retailer Amazon has unveiled a new drone service system that is designed to deliver your purchases within 30 minutes upon order. But you may have to wait a few years before the service is up and running, as the U.S. Aviation Administration has yet to approve drones for civilian use. Kim Min-ji has the details.
This customer is making what looks like a routine purchase through Amazon.com. But it could be the future of shopping if the online retailer has its way. After buying a product, the customer clicks the 30-minute delivery button. Back at the warehouse, the product is placed in a yellow box, carried along a conveyor belt, and picked up by a drone. Shortly after, the drone delivers the box to the customer's doorstep. This is a drone delivery service which will be called Prime Air, under development by Amazon, the world's largest online retailer. The drones, called octocopters, are powered by an electric motor and use a GPS system to locate the delivery destination. Amazon's chief executive says products that are under 2.3 kilograms in weight can be delivered within 30 minutes upon order.
These generations of vehicles, it could be a 10-mile radius from a fulfillment center. So in urban areas, you could actually cover very significant portions of the population.
However, it will be a few years before this service can be implemented, as the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has yet to draw up regulations for the use of unmanned drones for civilian purposes. The FAA could finalize its regulations for civilian unmanned aircraft systems by 2015 at the earliest, clearing the path for the Amazon project and possibly making drones a part of your future shopping experience. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off in the K-League Classic. Now, believe it or not, we're already at the final month of 2013, which means award ceremonies. And just yesterday, the 2013 K-League Classic award ceremony took place. Now, the top award on the night was the MVP award, which went to Ulsan Hyundai Tigers forward Kim Shin-wook, who scored 19 goals on the season, helping his team finish in second place. Meanwhile, the manager of the year went to former Taeguk Warrior and Pohang Steelers head coach Hwang Sun-woong, who led Pohang to their 5th league title over the weekend. And moving on, we've just finished the 2013 KLPGA season, and already fans are looking forward to the first KLPGA event of the new season. And surprisingly, with the first event taking place on the 6th in Taiwan, the Swinging Skirts 2013 World Ladies Masters will be a collaboration with the TLPGA. It'll consist with some of the biggest Korean golfers like Park In-bi, who finished the 2013 LPGA season ranked #1, and Chang Han-ah, who won the KLPGA Player of the Year honors. Meanwhile, Yen Hee-seng of Taiwan will be on hand as well, kicking off the new season. And moving on to some Tuesday night's KBL action, we had the Seoul Samsung Thunders take on the Busan KT Sonic Boom. So let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, going over to the game here, first quarter of the game, Lee Dong-jun, aka Daniel Sandra, leading the way with 8 points to take a 27-17 lead. KT trying to bounce back from a poor first quarter, but going to halftime, still trailing 42-32. With Cho Sung-min of KT held down to just 6 points on the night, the Seoul Samsung Thunders hang on to take this game 69-62. And now finishing things off with the results from Tuesday's V-League action, Hunguk Insurance Life Pink Spiders beat the struggling Hyundai Hill States in 5 sets, with KEPCO Vic Storms pulling away with a huge upset win over the Korean Iron Jumbos, 3-0. And so with that said, that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, we are not looking at any big changes in the forecast. That means a mild stretch of weather is in store for today, with today's highs will be hovering in the low teens with mostly sunny skies across much of the country. But the toxic smog from China will continue to sweep the country in the morning hours today, so be sure to wear a face mask on your morning commute. But other than that, skies should stay sunny all day long. Now, we've been blessed to have this mild condition this week, but don't get too comfortable as the winter weather returns next week. But now, here are the readings for today. The morning low in Seoul and Gwangju is starting out at 2 and 1, but afternoon highs will peak to 10 and 12 respectively, and afternoon highs in Daegu and Busan will climb into 14 under lots of sunshine. Now, let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will enjoy a mild day with highs reaching to 14 in the afternoon. Daejeon and Dokdo will reach at 11 and 10, but Mount Kumgang stays in the chilly side. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me at this hour. Enjoy your morning commute and hope you have a wonderful day.
Those are the stories we are following at this hour. Stay tuned to Arirang for more of the day's latest. Thank you for watching.